So, Joe, can you tell us, I mean, obviously you're British MW, you've made wine all over the world. Why did you decide to make wine here in Croatia? What is it that attracted you? Why is Hvar special?
Well, one, if I had a kuna for every time someone asked me that, I would be on my sailing boat, wandering around the Adriatic. But if you've just got to look around here, I mean, it is a stunningly beautiful island. And Croatia, I think, is a really beautiful country. But when I come back to Hvar, it reminds me of exactly how beautiful it is. That's one of the reasons in terms of it being a really special place. But as a winemaker, you know, as you say, I've worked in lots of different places around the world, and to make something of your own without your own vineyards, you have to have access to good grapes, because you can't get good wine without good grapes. So when I came here and I started talking to people in not just in Hvar but in the rest of Dalmatia about how things were changing in the wine industry, and a lot of people were planting their own vineyards to provide grapes for their own winery, and the cooperative movement had pretty much imploded. And so there was this idea of the fact that the people needed to sell their grapes to somebody, and maybe that somebody could be me. And so with all my training working for lots of different places and tasting grapes in the vineyard, I knew that I could go into a vineyard, taste the grapes, and know that the quality of the wine would be what I wanted. And so I started talking to people and asking them if they were prepared to sell their grapes. And I think having that, it sounds quite negative almost, the fact that they had no choice apart from to sell grapes to me, but of course they did. But in terms of if you went to France to ask someone to break a contract with a cooperative that they sell their grapes to, and they don't know whether you're going to be here next year or in 2 years' time, that is a very difficult thing to ask them to do. Whereas here, when people are looking to sell their grapes, it's an easier step to climb. And so I came and saw some of the quality in the vineyards, and how I thought that Plavac Mali was really interesting grape variety, and it just sort of became an organic, let's see if this can work.
Great. And I mean, in terms of growers, there's lots of different growers around Hvar Island. Can you give us a kind of 101 on the wine terroir here in terms of climate, soil, the kind of size of plots?
The size of plots are minuscule, so that's one of it. So, you know, I work with about 9 different growers, but within that, you know, just for the Dernakusha, which is the grape that I use to make my rosé, the Rosina, it's right at the very top of the island, so it's about 550 metres. It's got quite similar soil to down here, weirdly, but it's for every 100 metres you lose a degree. So when it's 30 here, it's 25 up there. When it's 35 down here, it's 30 there. But it has these winds from each direction because it's like a plateau at the top, and that produces a much better acidity. I get my Merlot from up there as well for the same reason, and it has this purity and pristineness because of the altitude. Whereas from down here on the valley floor, it's got this quite rich soil, and it can be hot as Hades here on some days. So you get a richness here but you don't have the brightness of the acidity at the top. So playing with the different heights of the altitude and the different positions can produce a nice blend in the bottle. And then on the south side of the island, which is where most of the Plavac Mali comes from, it's the best positions. They're literally, they're not quite sort of like 90 degrees, I don't know, they're not full 60 degree, I mean, they're ridiculously steep vineyards. But the Plavac Mali needs that, and Plavac Mali is the son of Zinfandel, so it has a similar taste profile. So they have the raisins and the plums and the herbal aspects of it, but it's very uneven ripening. So you need as much sunshine as you can get. And in an island which has got the most sunshine hours in the whole of Europe, you would think, well, that's not such a problem. But because of the uneven ripeness, they really do need a lot of sunshine. So you have the steep slope, so you have the sunshine going on there, but over that side the soils are very white, so you have the reflection of the sun up. But also the Adriatic a lot of the time is very still, so you have the reflection of the sunlight again up from the sea. So you have like 3 different types of sunshine, which makes those positions really special. And you get the grapes that are adequately ripe. Whereas the Plavac Mali from here can have a lighter touch and maybe more elegant. And if you find some sandy soils, which up near one of the villages, Virci, there's a lot of sandy soils there, and you get this floral aspect, which is really pretty, but it doesn't have the bigness, the richness, the boldness that you find on the south side of the island.
Excellent. And you keep making mention of here. Where are we, and why is this such a special place in the world? Because this is a viticultural gem.
Yeah, it's historic. I mean, this is the Starigad Plain. They call it the Arga locally, and it's UNESCO heritage site because this is still how sort of viticulture was started by the Greeks when they first came here 2,500, 3,000 years ago. Now, when the Greeks came over, they had a lot of different types of things that they were growing. So they grew tomatoes, and they're probably not tomatoes, thinking about it, because maybe they weren't around then. But there were lots of wheat here and lots of vegetables, as well as the vines for wine. And although predominantly it is vineyard here now, you will find where we are now is one of my growers, and they have a field next to the grapes, which they grow some of the best melons I've ever tasted in my life. They're fragrant and juicy, and the juice runs down your chin, and they're just absolutely amazing. And then next to that are tomatoes, and then they've got artichokes, and so they still use this plain in the same way as the Greeks did when they first established it. So that's why here is so special.
Excellent. And has the viticultural winemaking changed much? I mean, do you have, in terms of winemaking on the island, what's it like? What's the home garage wine like here?
The home garage wine is variable, and some garage wine, so my grower, he's got very good grapes, so he makes some really lovely wines, and he also thinks about looking after it and maybe adding some sulphur to protect it from going off. But mostly he has really pure, clean grapes when he starts, and that's always a plus. Sometimes the volatile acidity can be a little bit high, and I think lots of people sell their best grapes to people to earn money, and then what's sort of like left over, they make some wine for themselves to drink through the year. Mm-hmm. So I think it's variable in terms of what the people make in their backyard. And then stylistically, I think in Hvar for the wineries here, everyone's got a different sort of style, and so Tomic, where you went yesterday, he was one of the first private winemakers that after communism, and he worked in France for a while. So he works a lot with barrels and has a sort of modern, traditional, for want of a better word, approach to winemaking. And there's another family, the Sarich family, who have vineyards in both the south and the north side, and they have a lot of Merlot, so they do some nice blends. And then there's another guy, Ivo Dobokovic, who one of his big wines, he doesn't put any oak in at all. And then his other big wine, he puts lots of oak in, just to see the difference. So there's lots of people playing with different things on the island.
Excellent. And you've mentioned Plavac, which is obviously the kind of the most important native grape here for the island. And you've talked a little bit about the profile, but in terms of kind of tannins, acid, alcohol, how is it in the mouth?
I think you have to be. I spend a lot of time tasting in the vineyard, because there are lots of positions, and it's not to do with the south of the island and the north of the island. It's to do with, maybe it's a clone thing, maybe it's a rootstock thing. I really don't know. But there are some, you go into a vineyard and the pH is so high, and it's only reached a potential alcohol of maybe 11% or something crazy, and the tannins are just bitter, and they're never going to get ripe. And so I use the vineyard site to control the quality of the grapes, because I buy all of my grapes. So I go for more exposed and more extreme sites and older vineyards, so that the yield is naturally more controlled. So I don't think there's one Plavac Mali or Plavac Veliki, which is the other larger grape berry, because it really is site dependent. So I have some of my very highest Plavac Mali that I get from the south side. That will come in with a pH of like 3.4, but with maybe a potential alcohol of 13.5. And then some of the others that are slightly lower down, that maybe at 200 or 100 metres above sea level, that will probably come in at sort of 16% alcohol. And sort of richer, deeper, more raisins and chocolate, but I get the floral and the redder fruit from the top, and so when you actually blend them together, it's a nice 14.5, maybe even 15%, which in a country that's really hot is a perfect alcohol. They're not low alcohol wines, they're big and they're bold, but you really have to be careful of the tannins with Plavac Mali, because of this uneven ripening. you have to make sure that the tannins are right before you pick.
Great. And do you have a favourite local dish that you'd pair with Plavats?
Oh, in the summer, I would hate to say that because everyone drink Plavac Mali whenever you like, but actually in the summer when it's 35, 40 degrees, the last thing I want is a big bold red. But they do some really nice lamb, and it goes nicely with lamb. But I think Plavac's really comes into its own when the probably sort of mid-September, end of September, when the evenings start getting, you have to put a cardigan on, and you can make some sort of really big, bold sort of beef stews, or that sort of time. And they have this passagada, I can never pronounce it properly, but it's a beef stew that's cooked with prochec, which is their dessert wine here. They put a little bit of that in it, but they also put prunes in. So it's almost this sweet sour thing happening, and that's really beautiful because the Plavac's has got a sweetness to it about it, which is lovely. But you really need some cold nights to you're not going to be wanting to sit on your balcony at 30 degrees, chowing through some big bold stews.
Okay, and then for the summer then, because obviously the summer is one of the highlights in Croatia. What is your Hvar island wine for the summer?
I think some of the local grape varieties are fantastic. Poship is great, but it actually is not local. It actually comes from Cortula, even though we grow it here. I think my favourite is Bogdanuša, which is the local Hvar white grape variety. And in some sites that actually can get a relatively high alcohol, maybe up to potential of 13. But in lots of places it won't get much more than 11. But it has this really beautiful lemon and peach and sort of sometimes a little bit of a limey zest thing happening. And then you go through to the higher alcohols. You might even get some pineapple and some quince and different things in it. But it's really very local, and it has this herbal thing that you can smell the fennel. Just here you can just smell the fennel, and it has that in there as well. And I think because it is the local grape variety, and it's such an unsexy name, Bogdanuša, but bog actually means God, and it's gift from God because it actually produces a good quality wine every year. But marketing wise, internationally, having a wine called bog, not necessarily great, but to taste it is fantastic.
Well, you've sold Island Life anyway. Bog or no bog. Thank you.